We must never fail to show sympathy for those former believers who are courageous enough to abandon their religious beliefs as dictated by new argument and evidence. We must comfort them and assure them that it is all right to even shed a tear over the loss of hope in a saving power that they now realize never actually existed. And we must have support groups, like the gay community does, for those who come out of the closet and have to contend with the trauma of being shunned by family and friends. If you're a gay college student and you've come out of the closet and your family will no longer speak to you, there are support groups in the gay community who will be there for you. We must try to provide equivalent support groups, because when young people declare their non-belief, they face anywhere near, and sometimes the equivalent of, or worse, rejection by family and friends. In numerous small towns around this nation, numerous big towns around this nation, there are bright, sensitive, thoughtful young people who are doubting the claims of the religion in which they were raised, and will lose the support and love of their family if they come out of the closet as atheists. We have to be there to nurture and comfort them, because we cannot ask young people to declare themselves for reason versus superstition and then not be there to help them when they are abandoned by family as a consequence of their courageous move. This is the only way that we will get ever-increasing numbers of young people to have the courage, and it takes courage in this religion-ridden society, to come out of the closet. And as we continue to work our way through the multifaceted task of accelerating the pace with which atheism is presented to the general public, we must sustain our inspiration and enthusiasm, even through the most disappointing times, because we can never forget how important our effort is. But another way to make this more doable, to make the pieces smaller so we can digest this with greater ease and more realistically. Again, I will say that in order maybe for atheists to even be accepted as equal citizens with something of equal value to say, could take 100 years. It may be true that no one in this room today will live to see the ultimate fruition of our efforts, and that's fine. Because the effort we begin today will ripple across the decades, and regardless of how long it takes, and regardless of how slow the progress seems, if we begin now, we will be able to start a slow but ever-expanding intellectual and philosophical revolution in this country. Because explaining to society at large why there is no supernatural is the most important thing we can do. And what is our inspiration? What keeps us going through the darkest times? The knowledge that if we succeed, we atheists will have dispelled the greatest falsehood to ever permeate the world, and will have replaced it with the light of truth. Thank you.
Why don't Scandinavian countries and many other developed countries have the problem we have, that atheists there are able to speak out and are not shunned by others and are an acceptable part of society?
You ask a very profound question, and there are some multiple answers. First of all, Europe has had religious wars on its soil. We have not. The bloody civil war that we experienced was not fought over religion. We didn't have anything like what Europe experienced after the Reformation. And we haven't yet had beheadings, burnings at the stake on American soil over religion. Also, in addition to that, there has been in America a unique phenomenon. Simultaneously with our technological advance has always been this anti-intellectual strain of fundamentalism. The folksy down home, aw shucks religion has been competitive with the more progressive and the more advancing aspects of our culture. And this twin tension has caused enough of an anti-intellectualism that large swaths of our populace actually admire simplistic belief more than in-depth searching. So there's no question that we lack the milieu of acceptance that they have, particularly in Western Europe. And that's the reality we are beginning from. But by undertaking the steps that I was trying to present this morning, I think we'll be able to make a dent. Remember, I predict it'll take 100 years, but that's actually fine because that gives us some time. Where we get discouraged is if we think we'll be able to turn society around in 10 or 20 years. That won't happen. But a sustained effort over a century may very well achieve what we want.
Oh, I'm so glad your field is constitutional law. They say there's a separation between religion and state now, but I see so many infractions against that. Like in Washington, I understand the legislators can fly in clergy from anywhere in the country on the taxpayers' dollar and as often as they want to, and we're paying for that. And then this faith-based initiative is driving me crazy. How did they get away with that, and why didn't anybody stop it? And how did Obama get away with increasing it, and why is that still going on?
The reason why it's going on, and again, this is a very, very profound question you're asking, is because they know we don't have the resources to fight every single thing in court. They know that we can't afford every battle under the sun. Also, while we have preserved the fundamental core of government neutrality in matters of religion, we have lost at the edges. Right now, for our purposes, with 4 church-state separation judges on the court and 4 pro-religion justices on the court, the most important person in our world is Justice Anthony Kennedy. He is with us about 60% of the time. He is always with us in preserving the core principle of government neutrality. But when we lose him, that's when we lose cases. The Freedom from Religion Foundation, Madison, Wisconsin, courageously challenged the faith-based initiatives. But it resulted in a decision that we should have won, but that we lost by a heartbreaking 5-4 because we lost Justice Kennedy, in which the court ruled that that organization, though in the United States, didn't have standing to question the executive power in the promoting of faith-based initiatives, whether or not faith-based initiatives are constitutional. So this procedural standing issue was used by 5 on the court to block us from getting a hearing on the merits. So this is the type of thing that we face. The only thing we can do is raise more money so that our organizations that do these types of lawsuits are able to do them more frequently around the country. Americans United just stopped the I Believe license plate in South Carolina with a lawsuit. But to file lawsuits everywhere in the country, and that's simply what we're facing, is the religionists know that we do not have the resources or the numbers of lawyers around the nation to stop every single violation. So they'll hit us with millions of violations, knowing we'll be able to swat down in court only a few, and knowing that if there is a shift of one vote on the Supreme Court, the overwhelming majority of the religion-promoting legislation they undertake would now, for the first time ever, be upheld.
Comment and a question. The comment is, you were talking about gay rights and the power in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, gay person asked Landers, what can we do? And she said, talk about it. Talk about being gay. And I think that was the spark that helped build the fire. And the question is, you can't be right about 100 years. The earth is going to die within 50 years. But Nicodemus said, the earth would be divided between Muslims and Chinese. I think the Chinese are going to be putting a lot of pressure on Christians very quickly. Do you have a comment to that?
Well, no, because the Chinese are not really out to do anything to Christians. Today's Chinese government is, though they call themselves communists, is a monolithic economic business machine. And they will work with and appease anybody to make more money. If, in fact, the Chinese government, which I think it is objectively, is out to become America's greatest creditor, they will not say anything offensive to Christianity. They will court whoever is in power so that they can lend us more and more money and maybe own us by 2020 or 2030. So again, I think that, but you mentioned something else, and this is something I have to address. One of my problems is I don't skirt the touchiest issues, and then a lot of people are upset with me because I always have to offend somebody. But let me just say this. Though we are generally liberal, and many of us are generally politically liberal, disbelieving in a supernatural entity outside of the church-state religious right issues does not in any way entail a generalized left-of-center position on every conceivable political issue. Atheism does not have to be, nor should it be, contiguous with left-wing politics on every issue under the sun. And we're having a problem with left-wing academics. They should know better. But every time any Muslim community asks for special favoritism or claims to be offended, it is the left-wing academia that comes to their defense. So in Free Inquiry magazine, in 2006, we published the Danish cartoons. It was left-wing academia that accused us of racism and some other ism. We have to get the point across. There is no such thing as politically correct religion. That no religion should have special favoritism. And it doesn't matter if the left considers one particular religion to have been oppressed or mistreated by some white majority monolith.